Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Najmi Amirkhani, and today I'm going to talk about our work on a large-scale analysis of tech support scam. So I will first motivate it by some backgrounds and the historical evolution of the scam, and then I will go through some of our findings. So as you may know, tech support scam is not a new phenomenon. It has been around for a while, and it gradually gained momentum over the years and became more mature. The very first form of the scam, you may remember, started by cold calling random people. So the scammers call a random number, and they pretend to be from Microsoft, and they scare the victim that some critical security problem has happened, and then they connect to the user's machines and try to run some fake scans. And sometimes install malware, and finally they charge the victim hundreds of dollars. But the problem with cold calling was that it wasn't a targeted attack. So it's very possible that the scammers call a wrong number, like a Mac user, which obviously doesn't have Windows security problem, and then the scam fails. So in their new twist, the scammers started to use malvertising to have a more targeted attacks. Using malvertising, the scammers try to push overwhelming security warnings to the user's browsers and then try to convince the victim that his system is infected. So when the user is convinced, he will voluntarily call the scammers to get support. And because the user is willing to receive support, the scam is more likely to succeed. So this new technique has been evolved from simple security warnings to more aggressive techniques that makes it very difficult for the user to navigate away from the page. So this one is an example of a tech support scam page. So as you see, it tries to mimic a blue screen of this, and it pretends that the system has crashed because of infection. So the user needs to call this flashing toll-free number and get a username and password to unlock the screen. The way this is different from a typical ransomware is that in ransomware, they usually extort money from the victim directly, but in tech support scam, they convince the victim to call the scammer, and this provides the scammer with the opportunity to communicate with the victim, social engineer him, and in this way, probably charge him more or at least give him a false sense of legitimacy, so this can live longer. In some of the cases, the scammers are so polite that the unsavvy user can even understand that he's scammed, and they are happy with the service they received. In tech support, a scam has been getting more prevalent, and many complaints has been filed against it. So that FBI IC3 released two public announcements, one in 2014 and the other in 2016, to warn people about this increasing threat. At the same time, many big campaigns of tech-supported scam has been taken down by FTC or were sued by Microsoft. In some of the halted scams, they have estimated that the scams have earned more than $100 million. But despite all these efforts, the threat of tech-supported scam is still increasing. A recent report from Symantec showed that the scam had a growth of 200% in 2015. So all we know about this scam is that it's a $1 million underground business, and it's scamming everyday user. But we don't really have solid statistics about the prevalence of this scam, because all the data is collected is based on handful analysis of security companies from some specific cases. So what we want to do in this project is to systematically study this scam in a larger scale, and then come up with concrete statistics about the prevalence of the scams, their evasion techniques, the underlying infrastructure, and so on. So as the first step toward this project, we implemented RoboVic, which is our tool to collect the data. But first of all, we need to feed RoboVic with a stream of high toxicity URLs. But the question is that how we can find such URLs in the wild. We know that tech-supported scam is spreading the attack through malvertising, so we use the services that are collaborating with malicious ad networks as a gateway to reach those networks. From previous works, we know that parking services and ad-based URL shorteners are highly correlated with malvertising. So we use these services as our gateways. In case of ad-based URL shorteners, they usually show an advertisement to the user before they redirect the user to the long format of the URL. So we create short URLs for the high toxicity shorteners, and we feed it to our crawler. For the case of parking services, we need one more extra step because we cannot reach to these services directly. So what we do here is that we first visit popular type-squating domains that trying to monetize through parking services. And then we can reach to the parking services, and they will forward us to the malicious ad networks, and finally we can get exposed to tech support scam pages. So based on the data we collected over 8 months, RoboVic could collect more than 22,000 scam pages, more than 8,000 scam domains, and 1,500 scam phone numbers. And the domains that we detected had different patterns. Some of them were very short and readable, and they contained warning keywords. Some of them were very long, that represent a very long warning sentence. And there are also cases that the scammers are abusing content delivery networks to get a random URL. So we deployed the instances of RoboVic on our campus cloud and also 2 public commercial clouds. And as you can see in this graph, the number of domains that are detected by campus cloud is significantly more than the domains that are detected by the public cloud RoboVics. And the reason is that the scammers are trying to clock based on the user's IP address, and they try to evade the inorganic traffic that are coming from public clouds. Scammers also use other evasion techniques that I just briefly go through some of these interesting cases. So they try to hide their backend servers behind Cloudflare, and they also use privacy protection services in order to hide the registration information of their scam domains. They're also using a small number of telecommunication companies, and they prefer those companies that provide an API to make and receive calls. And this is what the scammers need in order to scale their business. The other interesting finding is that the number of phone numbers are much less than the number of domains. And this means that the phone numbers are more valuable assets for the scammers, and they try to reuse the phone numbers. So we use this intuition, and we use phone numbers as a way to link together unrelated domains, which are essentially operated by the same campaigns. So we plot the network graph of the phone numbers and the scam domains, while the phone numbers are like noted here are the black nodes, and the domain names are the gray nodes. So in this way we detect 400 different campaigns of the scam with unique characteristics. We also estimate the lifetime of the campaigns by adding timestamp to the network graph and consider the time difference between the oldest and the newest node of the graph. So as you see, most of the campaigns have a very short lifetime of less than 50 days. But there are also campaigns that could survive from detection and crackdown for more than 8 months, which was the whole duration of our study. The other interesting pattern here is that there are some domains which are connected to multiple phone numbers. And this is because these domains generate phone numbers dynamically on each page load. If you take a look at the source code of these pages, we see that these campaigns are abusing a novel marketing framework, which is called pay-per-call marketing. So in this scheme, the scam page, which is essentially a publisher, sends the profile of the visitor to a pay-per-call management framework, which was most of the time retriever. And then the framework decides, based on the profile of the visitor, which call center can serve the victim in the best way, for example, based on his operating system or his location. And then it generates dynamically a phone number from a pool of numbers, sends it back to the page. So when the user calls the number on the page, he will be redirected to the selected call center. So here we are not sure that the parties who are operating and creating the scam page are necessarily different from the parties who are operating the call centers, but the bottom line is that tech support scam is an organized crime, and it's mature enough to use such a sophisticated network. So far, what I was talking about was about the visible portion of the scam and its underlying infrastructure. But we don't really know what will happen behind the scenes when the user calls a scam number. To understand this part of the scam ecosystem, we interacted with 60 different scammers, and we collect the information, we collect the network traffic, our conversations, and recorded the screen. As the scammers are human subject, we first obtain permission from our IRB, and then we interacted with the scammers. In our calls, we pretended that we are non-technical user. We don't know what is an IP address. We don't know what is a virus. And then we allowed the scammers to connect to our disposable virtual environment and then take the control of it and then social engineer us. So based on the data we collected here, we find many interesting statistics about the size of the call centers, about the tools they were using, and the duration of the calls. We also find that the scammers are really creative, so they use different social engineering techniques in order to convince the victims. We grouped together all these techniques into 15 different categories, and as you see in the right graph, there is no single technique which is used by the majority of the scammers. And as the heat map shows, the scammers usually combine together different techniques in order to trick the victim. The other interesting finding was the range of the prices, which varied from $70 to sometimes $1,000, with an average of $300. So what we want to know is that where these scammers are located and how much money they really make. So based on the data we collected, we find that most of the scam servers are located in the US, which is not a big surprise. But as the second and the third choice of the scammers, they have chosen India and Singapore. And these two countries are not among the top hosting countries. So these results shows a link between the scammers and these countries. In order to find the location of the call centers, we find that some of the remote administration tools used by the scammers actually revealed their IP addresses, so we could track down their physical locations and find that most of them are located in India, which means that India is a popular choice of the scammers in order to outsource their call centers. To find the location of the victims, we need to monitor the traffic of the web servers, the scam web servers. But it's not trivial, so what we did is that we find that some web servers have a kind of misconfiguration, so we can use those configuration, we can use these vulnerability to collect data about their incoming traffic. And in this way, we find that most of the victims were coming from countries such as the US, New Zealand, Australia. And the reason that the scammers are targeting this population is that maybe setting up an English-speaking call center would be easier for the scammers, so they are targeting mostly English-speaking countries. From the statistics we collected from the volume of the victim traffic and the average of prices, average of support prices, and also the conversion rate of a similar scareware, we detected that scammers have earned around $10 million in that time period. So in order to have a defense mechanism against scammers, the only existing solution is to use some kinds of blacklist, maybe a domain name blacklist or a phone number blacklist. In case of phone number blacklist, we can check the history of a phone number in a website such as 800notes.com, or you can install an application in your mobile, in your cell phone, that will warn you whenever you want to make a suspicious call. So what we did is that we installed all these mobile applications in an Android emulator, and we simulate the calls to the scam numbers. We also scraped all these websites, and what we find is that if you use all of these methods, it only protects you against less than 30% of the scams. The story is pretty much the same for the domain names. The 6 large domain blacklists can only protect you against less than 7% of the domains, of the scams. So the reason for such a poor performance of the blacklist is that tech support scam is highly dynamic. And based on what RoboVic detected, most of the scam domains have a lifetime of less than one day. And they also use services such as content delivery networks to get a random URL. In case of phone numbers, their lifetime is also very short. Most of them were registered recently, and there are also schemes that generate phone numbers dynamically that makes it very difficult to track them. So as a defense against tech support scam, first of all, we need to educate people to avoid trapping in this scam. And this would be easier for tech support scam because the only thing that the user needs to know is that his browser cannot say anything about the security of his system. In addition, if the user is educated, browser vendors should provide a simple way for the user that they can navigate away from a scam page. For example, like a shortcut they can push whenever they feel that the website is threatening him. So to summarize, we did the first systematic study of tech support scam, and then we implemented the tool to collect thousands of scam domains and scam phone numbers, and we reported on the prevalence of these phenomena, the underlying infrastructure and the evasion techniques. We interacted with 60 different scammers, and we find out their social engineering techniques, and we showed that current blacklists are not efficient, so we need to educate people and also have some support from browser vendors. So thank you very much for listening. I will take any question.
Hi, Robert for work.